Renovating Retirement with Charlie Jewett. Oh no, I think I'm about to have another episode.
Hey everybody, Charlie Jewett with Renovating Retirement here today with someone that I've not introduced you to, but is an amazing man, Dennis Stack from Legacy Stories. Dennis, how you doing today?
Very good, sir.
I can't wait to talk about this because you really know your stuff. You're in a niche, right?
Yeah, it's a niche of a niche.
a piece of a piece, right?
Exactly. An important one.
It's super important. And you know a little bit about my story with another group a long time ago that kind of couldn't get their act together. But man, if I cared about this stuff for a really long time and in my life have struggled, so I'll be very honest about that, to have the discipline of kind of doing what needs to be done. But before we jump into anything, let me talk a little bit about you so people know who we're talking to. You were the former, senior vice president and a branch manager for UBS Payne Weber. And it sounds like you were doing, in over 20 years, you were doing like pretty high level estate planning, wealth management, accounting, and insurance, sort of, my world that I live in, but on a very high level with high net worth people, right?
Very much so. Had built a group of 12 professionals in disparate professions that all came together in a harmonious effort to help clients.
See, that speaks to my heart. I'm having a little bit of goosebumps here because I created this merit planning model: mortgage plan, estate plan, retirement plan, insurance plan, and tax plan. And actually at one point tried to build that harmonious team, board of financial directors. It's not that easy, honestly.
No, it really isn't. And it takes people who understand what networking really means.
Yeah. Now, you had a bit of a change in your life. You lost your father. How old was he when you lost him?
He was 78 years old, and that was 2 years prior to the birth of my only child.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And it had a profound impact on me. I realized that my father was a very, very private man, never spoke about the day before, much less earlier days in his life. And upon his passing, I was remorseful about never having asked him, not that necessarily he'd tell me, but that I never even inquired. And I just assuaged my guilt by thinking, well, I can always ask my mom. And then 2 years after my father's death, my daughter was born. 2 years after that, my mother came to visit and we discovered she had Alzheimer's. And a year later, I visited her in a facility in upstate New York, and on the long flight back to Arizona, the walls of my life came tumbling in.
Yeah. See, this is interesting. I watched I go back and forth to Hawaii every month. I spend 4 days in Hawaii every month recording television shows and meeting with my employees over there and my clients. And I watched the show, and this will sound crazy when I start, but I'll end up in a good place. And the show's idea, it's a local guy in Hawaii, but he takes a local dish. It's a cooking show. He takes a local dish and traces it back to its roots. So he finds somebody who was very special in their upbringing. It's called family recipes or something like that. He finds a local dish and traces it back to, finds somebody who's special in their family and traces it back to its roots. And they go to that country and they kind of go to 3 different places that cook it and ask where it came from. And the first show I watched, Dennis, was Bruno Mars's sister. I don't even remember her name, but her little brother is Bruno Mars. And it was this bean and rice recipe from Puerto Rico. And I don't remember what it's called. But I'm telling you, at the end of the video, talking about not like how to be successful, how to be a mom and a dad, how to manage your money, anything about life, but this woman was crying, like weeping, that all the times her mom said, come cook next to me. Come learn this family recipe. She blew her off and didn't really want to learn it. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, her mother died. And she's in tears over a recipe, right? And what I know of your system, and we'll get into this, I must get better at using it. I need to tell people about it and get them using it. But what I know already is we're not just capturing like how to make rice and beans, but capturing the essence, the wisdom, the traditions, things that people learned in generations. They were in a setting that was different than us. We're capturing the essence of our parents and grandparents before it dies with them, right?
Exactly. And one thing I've learned is that regret lasts forever.
You're absolutely right. regret, if you don't do something before someone passes away, you can never go back and do it. There is a deadline on this, and it's a mystery deadline. And this is the ultimate. It's better to teach someone how to fish than make them a fish dinner, right?
Exactly.
Our folks, we're not good at this in our country, but people that lived 30, 40, 50 years before us, they have some incredible experiences and wisdom and knowledge that we really could benefit from.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly in a family tradition setting, right?
Exactly.
So you had parents who passed away, it sounds like, before you were able to do all of what you're doing today and all of what you help people do. And then you created this Storykeeper Guidebook, which has become the Legacy Stories Handbook. So tell us about that.
Well, it was an effort to, work through my mourning for my parents and my regret for having done nothing. In fact, it kind of reached its crescendo in September of 2001 as I saw the tragedy unfold. And I realized instantly that there were thousands of people whose life stories ended that day, who had plans to do this, that, or the other thing that would never happen.
Yeah.
And it just kind of all came crashing in on me. And a month later, I was, as you mentioned, a financial advisor with UBS Payne Weber at the time. And I'd grown over more than a decade of sending clients a present at the holidays, some bauble or token to thank them for their patronage. And that year, when I started thinking, what am I going to send this year? It just felt wrong. It just felt like this was not a thing to do. And what I had done in the time from my father's passing and my mother's Alzheimer's is every day, and I kept a spiral-bound notebook open all times because you receive, well, you know this, you get so many phone calls. If you're not keeping track of every nuance of the conversation, something will be lost and could have tragic consequences. But one of the things I did was, as I would be sitting there in my office between calls, if I thought of a question I would have wanted to ask my mother or father, I'd jot it down. And over the course of a few years, that turned into a whole lot of questions. And I was, commiserating with a childhood friend who was a graphic designer and writer, and telling him of my plight. And he suggested I put all those questions together in a book and put those out. And he helped me with it. I did. I created the original Storykeeper Guide, is what we called it at the time. And I had that printed and published, and took that little guidebook and a little shoebox cassette recorder, careful to keep the total cost of the gift under $25.
For those of you that don't know, there's some laws in the financial services world where we can't spoil you too good.
Yeah. And what I did is I selected my top 100 clients and I sent them this gift. And all I included in there was a note. And the note said, as your family gathers for the holidays, start saving something that's worth much more than just money. And, despite more than a decade of sending gifts out to clients, and typically you get a call back or a thank you note for having sent that bottle of wine or the nice Mont Blanc pen or, whatever. But in this case, in almost every case, I got a phone call, a highly emotionally charged phone call. And I know this is 2018, this is going to sound sexist, but my primary clients in almost all cases was the patriarch rather than the matriarch. But the calls I received were from the matriarchs. And all of them I'd met in passing or when, their husband would bring them to the office with them. But it was so profound, and they were so touched by this thoughtfulness of the gift that I just knew I had tapped into something that mattered. And that was the humble beginning, I guess.
This is really neat for me because I have a super long history back to 2005 with this idea of other types of assets. So wisdom assets and tradition assets and memories, and if you let them die and family banking and these concepts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oh gosh, Dennis, I don't know why. Just it's like exercise. Over the years, I've just struggled so much to do it. But I have pulled off three things. I've pulled off 3 successes. I interviewed my grandfather and who has now passed away. I interviewed my grandfather in 2014, and I just pulled it up from my Google Drive, and it's 40 pages long. I have video of using someone else's questions, similar to what you said, kind of memory joggers and just ideas, right? Tell me about a fond childhood memory. What was it like growing up? What was money like for you growing up? Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
I have video of one client who I got into my office twice to capture some of his family's wisdom, right? Because we'd love to hand it out on a DVD at his funeral and all that good stuff. And probably the most important step I've ever taken was paying for your services, right?
Mm-hmm.
And tell people a bit about what's available, like what you guys do, what Legacy Stories offers, and then my listeners, I'm sure, are going to be interested in what they can get from what I've paid for, right? Because there's something they can have from what I paid a while back, I think, right?
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, it's simply awareness. Too often our lives get hectic, and I thought, well, if you just get proactive and you do something can happen. Well, unfortunately, it's not as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been at this now for, easily 15 years, and it's been muddling through my mind for years prior. But I found that people who engage in the process of relating the experiences of their life find that it's one of the most rewarding activities they could ever engage in. But the problem is that most people, there's 3 primary impediments. The first is when somebody finally cracks the shell and looks at doing something like this, they get overwhelmed.
That's me.
It's like, oh my God, I'm 70 some odd years old. Where would I even begin?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that stops most people. The next, pushback I got from people when I started introducing this concept is, well, Dennis, I don't write so good.
Mm.
And it's like, that's the default. Everybody thinks this has to resolve into a printed publication, and that their education or lack thereof will be disclosed, that they don't write so well, and they'll be humiliated. And, get past that. It's not how you're saying things, it's what you're saying that matters.
Mm-hmm.
But then lastly, the greatest impediment of all is, Dennis, you're right. I really need to do this. I really appreciate, you're showing me this path to help make it happen. I'm going to get right on this tomorrow.
Not today.
Yeah, not today. And something always happens. Some life event intervenes, and procrastination is the biggest killer of all.
So let's do this. Let's let me be candid and have you coach me in front of the listeners, right?
I'm glad you use that word, coach. Okay, go on, please.
Perfect. I mean, I've struggled. I mean, the overwhelm is incredibly real, not just in what you guys offer, but just in all of life today in America, right? Especially if you're an entrepreneur, and especially if you're going through a divorce. Hey, it's like unbelievable. So it's 1:40 where I am, right? And I've signed up with you 2 years ago. I don't know, right?
A little over a year and a half, maybe.
So I have this incredible Ferrari of sources from you, and haven't even gotten into the car and turned on the key for the most part. I have in my life, well, I'm only 46, but I have incredible life experiences. I fly all the time. I have no idea when I would die. I'm in this business, right? So I certainly want to figure this out and offer it to my clients that we care so much about. And I'm trying to become the preeminent retirement planning in the entire country and replace the biggest brokers in the country. So I need to figure this out. I've got pictures everywhere of my family that have no titles. They're just all over the place, right? What could I do today? Like, we hang up, right? We stop recording, and I don't want to wait till tomorrow. I want to use what I paid for and start to record. I start to record my assets. Where would I start?
Okay, well, let me, I will answer that, but let me just point out one thing. You use the word coach. The one thing that I've found, I think the secret sauce to making this happen is accountability. And one thing I know from my experience as a financial advisor is that when people trust someone like yourself or myself with managing the wealth of the family, their lifeblood, if you will, as far as they're concerned, the trust goes off the needle pegs. And I found myself countless times being cast something between a psychotherapist and a marriage counselor. I mean, it wasn't about their 401, their retirement plans, or it was, name it, any type of situation. The problems they're having with their kids. What college should their kids go? I mean, anything and everything, and almost nothing to do with what my primary mission was, which was to effectively manage their assets. And what I've discovered, and I've tried, like I said, I've been at this 15 years. I've been working with elder care professionals and institutions, and what I found, the missing ingredient is accountability. It's not just introducing a wonderful idea and activity to somebody, it's having accountability. And to my mind, who better to be that accountable source than your financial advisor? Right. I mean, my gosh, you're trusting this person, with managing your family's wealth with your entire life savings. If you don't listen to what this person has to say and take action on their recommendations, you're a fool.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea here is that by being the trusted source, being that financial advisor puts the advisor in the perfect position to be the coach who not only introduces the idea, but becomes the accountability aspect, the person who, when the client calls, of course you're going to talk about the investments in the markets and this and that, but to finish the conversation with, have you recorded any stories yet? Or just keeping it front and center for the client, because that's the only way that they're going to make progress. And to that end, and in our site and in our program, we've come up with a number of different tools and devices, if you will, to help people overcome this procrastination and the not knowing where to start. We have a reminiscence program that, again, everybody who signs up into Legacy Stories gets this. We send one question a week, just one. And we admonish people not to take more than 5 or 10 minutes answering it. And we give them tips and ideas on how to answer it. Just for gosh sakes, please just answer this one question. And these questions are innocuous. It's like, what was your favorite subject in school?
Mm-hmm.
And what people don't realize is that we've worked with professional psychologists and a number of others in developing these questions. As innocuous as they are, the order in which they're presented and the way that people answer these questions puts people on a path of self-discovery. I mean, we all reminisce. You smell something cooking, it reminds you of the holidays at grandma's house, or you hear a favorite song, you remember your first date. I mean, reminiscing is very therapeutic, and everybody does it. But the one part that they fail to do is that it's a brief flight from from the existing reality to a better time, and then snap, you're back to the present.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the Legacy Stories approach is that we take people through a guided reminiscence of their life. And as they're relating these innocuous stories, and it's not purely chronological, it's more based on life events at different stages. But as they start relating these stories in the order that we present the questions to them, at a certain point, there's an aha moment that happens. because they're not just relating isolated events and experiences. They end up connecting dots and they discover something about themselves where they have that, oh my gosh moment where that's why I do things the way I do things. And once they have this epiphany, it's like floodgates open up. They understand not only who they are, but how they got there. And most importantly, they now know where they want to go.
Right, right.
And, that's the kind of thing. And the difference here, I mean, anybody can go through this process, but the difference that we add is that we're documenting these things so that it's not something that, well, you remember, maybe you don't, I'm older than you, but it was called the telephone game.
Yeah. Yep.
Where somebody whispers something in one person's ear, the next, and then it's completely corrupted when it comes out the other end and everybody laughs.
Right.
Well, over the generations that man has existed on the planet, that's the way that we've transmitted our family knowledge, our wisdom, our morals, has been through the oral tradition. And unfortunately, that oral tradition has failings. The story told once, twice, thrice, and so on becomes corrupted and the message is lost.
Right.
Today with the technology we have the ability to keep a story told the first time in the first voice in perpetuity so that the message is never lost or corrupted.
Right.
And that can be very powerful because, we are what we came from. And if we don't know that, in fact, I go on a small soapbox here. I'll keep it as small as possible. But I'm old enough to remember that in my youth, America was predominantly an extended nation family. Families would gather 2, 3, 4 generations around the dinner table at least a couple times a week. And in that environment, children learned what it meant to be a member of that family, how to comport themselves in society, how to deal with problems. By osmosis, they heard the adults discussing the events of the day.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2018. Today, we're predominantly a nuclear family nation. Single parent, 2-income families. Grandma lives in an assisted living community in Scottsdale, and the kids are in Minnesota, Montana, and Virginia. And they all make their pilgrimage at the holidays to visit grandma. And when they get there, it's awkward. This is a stranger to them. They don't know who she is. And they default to talking about the weather and current events. And the thing is that through our lives, we go through 3 major stages in our lives in developing. The first stage, when we're birthed to adulthood, we're learning. We're learning how to be a human, how to be a member of the family, how to be a useful contributor to society. Once you transition out of the learning phase, you become a provider. And most of us, through most of our adult lives, we're providers. And our sense of self-esteem and purpose is based on how good of a provider we are.
Right.
But then what happens when you're too old to hunt the beast or harvest the crop? In the extended family, you became elevated. You became the family consigliere, the wise sage counsel. And your purpose in life was to share your wisdom and your experience with the young who are just learning. But the trouble is that those days are gone. So how do we, and then the other frustrating thing is that we do all the right things for grandma. Her health is deteriorated to the point where the family cannot provide the level of care that she needs. So we do the right thing. We put mom into a facility, a community, if you will, and she's there with her peers, and they have great food and great medical care and lots of activities. But the one thing that's missing, the one thing that grandma wants more than anything else in the world, is to fulfill her purpose. And her purpose is to share with her family those things that she's learned.
Yeah.
And that's just not happening anymore.
That's sad.
And so that's why we created Legacy Stories. In fact, one of the tools that we created is a smartphone app. There's not a single kid alive in America today that doesn't have a smartphone and is not expert in its use. When the kids go visit, it's an artificial construct, but give them an assignment, give them something to do. Every grandma, everybody my age and older has their life documented already, and it's in an analog fashion. It's photo albums, it's keepsakes, it's heirlooms, and our children are documenting their lives in painful detail because they're all digital. Well, here's an opportunity. Take these digitally enabled children, sit them with grandma, have them ask her to take out her photo album. She has one, trust me. And in that photo album is every defining moment of her life. And when she gets the album out, the kids take their smartphones with our app installed. It allows them to take a digital scan of a photo. And with one click, next click, they can crop and manipulate it. Third click, they give that device, and it could be an iPad, a tablet, a phone. It's universal. But they give that device with that defining image on there to grandma, and she just starts talking about that moment, what it meant, who was in that picture. And in 3 minutes or less, and we capped it to 3 minutes, not by accident, and it's not because grandma couldn't wax on for much longer. We're concerned about the message being heard. And so we limited it to 3 minutes, gauged on our assessment of the attention span. And so this way the story can be captured, and then these can be done serially. You can do as many of these photos as you want. And it turns out that is exactly what grandma was made to do, was to share her life with her grandkids. So highly positive for grandma, incredibly therapeutic. And the kids are learning at grandma's knee, as has been done through generations. Only in this case, it's being captured and preserved for posterity. So once these stories are captured, they can be uploaded to grandma's encrypted archive. Every single story needs to be tagged with who the appropriate audience is, because some stories are appropriate for family only, friends only, or the public, or some combination thereof. But when they get loaded up into grandma's archive, the system is designed to where at their election, it can send out a link instantaneously to that designated audience, her kids and grandkids who didn't come visit. They receive a ping on their phone, just like they do with their Snapchat and Instagram and Twitter and the rest. They click on it, and in 3 minutes or less, they can hear grandma in her own voice describe a moment that mattered. Mm. And when they hear that story, it becomes their own memories now. And they can revisit it as often as they like. And then, even though they didn't come visit, they can tap out a little text message to grandma saying, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
That then becomes her reward.
Well, I'm full of ideas here, but let me revisit my question and then talk about my listeners and my clients. For me, maybe the best thing, the one step that I can take today, maybe you need to I think you sent me the reminiscence emails and I didn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
I don't have anybody holding me accountable. But what I could do, I think, to get this started is if you send the reminiscence, are you able to do that? Turn on the email campaign where I start over again for the reminiscence email?
I can have that done.
Have that done. Let me get going. But what I'd love to do is take my staff members through it, right? So if I take Abby, and Ian through this where I'm the one holding them accountable and train them how to help our people, right? Because what's important to me in this model, we're trying to create the financial services company that does more for less fees than anybody in the country and redefines what financial services is. It's not just a broker selling you stocks. There's a lot more going on. And the model I created 14 years ago of merit planning, mortgage plan, estate plan, retirement plan, insurance plan, and tax plan, we're not offering to do your trust. We're not attorneys. We work through partnerships, your own attorney, or we'll find one. But more than the trust, this, what's much more important in the estate planning part of financial services is not just the trust documents and keeping them up to date, but capturing your true assets. And then when there is a passing on of someone, handling everything smoothly and transferring to the next generation, celebrating that person's life and transferring the assets. And that's the part that we want to manage at Renovating Retirement. We want to manage that piece really well, provide that accountability. And so I would like to have a do-over and figure this out for me and my team, and then begin offering this to our listeners and the people that work with us.
Well, it's more important, I think, than you know. I mean, one of the things I've said countless times is that when wealth is transferred without the wisdom that created, it's summarily wasted.
Mm.
And that's what put me on this path in the first place, is that I was doing succession planning, my team and myself, before they even called it succession planning. And I discovered later in my career that the wishes of my clients, that this wealth that they transferred would be a benefit, was not benefiting the clients. And then I've subsequently done research and discovered that succession planning, as it was and is still currently practiced, only fails 94% of the time by
Good
the
Lord.
third generation.
Is that the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations?
Yep, or sandals to sandals, and it's not unique to the American culture. There's actually a Chinese proverb to that effect.
Hey, I work in Hawaii. Sandals to sandals is success.
Well, I suppose it all depends on your
They just call it slippers to slippers.
But that's just for Hawaii.
Exactly. The rest of the world's in trouble if you're stuck in sandals.
Rougher ground to walk upon.
Being in sandals in New York in the winter is not success.
No, definitely not.
Yep.
But one of the things I discovered was that, and I actually contracted a psychology professor, this is way back in 98, so my gosh, 20 years ago, to research what I dubbed at the time when I first started discovering this. It was dubbed sudden wealth syndrome. Why is it that people who come into insanely incredible wealth routinely destroy their lives? And despite the 40-page report that he wrote talking about control and non-control issues, I can sum it up simply by saying that if you earn something from the sweat of your own brow, that earning has value to you. If, on the other hand, you receive something for having done nothing, it means nothing. And so the problem for me became, it wasn't a problem of improper documentation and legal architecture. It wasn't bad asset management. It was lacking in the wisdom. It was that wealth separated from the wisdom. And so I set about creating essentially legacy stories. And the idea of legacy stories is to marry the wisdom that created the wealth with the wisdom. And in fact, we have podcasts on our site as well that I encourage you to take a listen. In fact, one I re-listened to just before this call from Dr. Marshall Duke out of Emory. He created what he calls the Do You Know scale. And years ago, he and another Dr. Fivish, another professor at Emory, did a study where they interviewed families. They created a list of 20 questions. And these questions that they asked the children of the families were all questions about things that the kids could never have witnessed themselves. It was an experience they couldn't have. It was knowledge that had to be told to them. And out of these 20 questions, and they're things like, where did your parents meet? Where did they go to school? Where did your great-grandfather do for a living? And things like that the children who could answer 15 or more of those questions demonstrated extremely resilient personalities and high levels of confidence / self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And they revisited those children when they became adults. And in each and every case, each of those children grew to be incredibly confident, very motivated, and very successful in life.
Yeah.
And it's something as simple as telling a story. I mean, because to get to the bottom line of this, I call it the family narrative, the who we are, where we came from, how we got here, and very importantly, what we stand for. If we can ingrain that family narrative, and each family's narrative, it's like a DNA, there's differences between them. But if we can ingrain that narrative into each of our children, they're going to grow up with a much better sense of who they are, and as different from their peer groups, as different from the inundation in social media and entertainment. They have a baseline that they can revert to that makes them unique.
Right.
And if you were to put it into a single word, it's pride. If people are proud of who they are and from where they came, there's nothing that will defeat them.
Yeah. We've lost some of that. We really have lost some of that.
And it's not to say that all experiences are good. In fact, I think even more could be learned from a bad experience. It's just that, as quickly as the sands of our society are shifting, we desperately need somebody to put a stick in the sand just so we know from where we moved.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And that's what family stories are all about.
Well, this is important to us at Renovating Retirement, and we get clients from the show. There's listeners who call in and say, hey, I'm ready to go. I don't want to be in the traditional model anymore. I want real financial planning with honesty and kind of clarity based instead of just trusting somebody blindly. I know you'll have to remind me, but what's this going to cost my listeners, or what did I pay for, or how do people that are hearing this use this through what you and I have done together?
Well, that's one of the reasons why legacy.org, everything on that site that we do for free. We do not charge anything to anyone for the work we do.
What?
It makes it very, very difficult for sustainability.
I would think so.
Except for the insightful nature of people like yourself that can recognize a problem, and the money you paid essentially helped us with sustaining this to be free for everyone.
Right. To be clear, like you guys, it's not a ministry. You're just not monetizing it through our clients. You advisors like myself or people that care come along and pay to support what you're doing, right? However, what I've purchased for the people who listen, people who are my clients, they're allowed to use your services at no cost.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
But again, the failing here is that, the old, you can lead a horse to water. I mean, we've got all these tools. We know they work.
Yeah.
But how do you motivate people to actually do it? And that's where it comes back to the concept of a legacy coach, somebody who will take the initiative to introduce the idea, to maybe help them take the first step, because without a first step, there's never going to be a second. But to lay it out for them, to show them the path that they can follow, and then to be the accountable authority to help assure that they not only stay on the path, but they keep moving on it.
Yep. Got it. So the best way for people to reach out, should they just email or call my office, or can we provide them a link of some sort? I mean, I can buy a domain. I do that a lot. I have watchcharlie.com for my YouTube channel, Charlie's Pictures for my Instagram. Is there some link that I've got in my site that they can go to, or should I just have them get in touch with my office?
Well, we can get you a link for your site. I encourage your listeners and your clients to contact your office, because in as much as you said you're staffing up for this, I would avail myself to help you train your staff.
Perfect. I think the best thing you could do for me is provide accountability for me. I'll provide it for my staff, right? You can train my staff, but I need someone to help me respond to those emails. So if you're making offers, I'll take you up on that all day long. And then I will go, I'll go buy, I don't know, something, charlieslegacy.com, you know what I mean? Or legacyplanwithcharlie.com, something along those lines.
Okay.
And then point people to it. But you can email the office, charlie@jewett.wealth.com, CHARLIE @JEWETT wealth.com. You can call us 888-285-2268, 888-285-2268, or go to, what was I going to do? legacywithcharlie.com. And Dennis, if you're willing to help us and help us to bring these incredible, this incredible process and the accountability needed to the people that we're caring for, I would be much, much indebted.
Well, I can assure you, Charlie, that should your clients pursue this path, they will be your clients forever, generation after generation.
Well, we think we do what's best for people, and it's best for them to be with us, that we're actually protecting them, right, from other things. There are agents, there are other financial advisors who listen and affiliate with me or are checking us out. I know that you can be very helpful to them. How can other either estate planners, CPAs, financial advisors, insurance agents, how can they get in touch with you and possibly help the loved ones in their lives?
Two ways. They can either go to the site, legacystories.org, and hit the contact us, or I can be reached directly. My email is Dennis, DENNIS, at legacystories.org.
Awesome. Good stuff, Dennis. You do know your stuff.
After 15 years, I would hope so.
The niche of a niche of a niche. That's awesome. All right, everybody. This has been awesome. Dennis, thank you so much. I hope we're able to help a ton of people. I've cared about this for a long time. It's time we implement it. I'm committed to that. I'll take as much accountability from you as I can get. We can talk offline. But that is wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We will see you guys on the next episode. And why do I do this? Because I think you people are the best.
That's all, folks.